This is episode 13 of the Music Therapy Chronicles podcast with Marie Miller.
I really loved coming up with the interventions, and I loved creating songs based off of, I would find out, what's this child interested in? And then we'd have an activity that was based off of that. And I had this feeling one day, I kind of got really anxious that what if I run out of material to create? What if I can't think of what to make for this next group? What if I run out of new things to bring to this group? And I do probably 95% of my own material and maybe 5% of something I've learned from someone else, or a song that's been out there before. And I had this fear of, what if I just get to this point where I can't create new things?
You're listening to the Music Therapy Chronicles, a podcast about music therapy from a variety of perspectives. Our ambition is to inspire and connect listeners through meaningful conversations, just like a music therapy conference you can listen to anywhere. My name is Trisha Kayati, and I am a board-certified music therapist from the New England region. If you like what you hear, join our group on Facebook and share your own insights and thoughts about the episodes. You can also connect with us on social media and online at Music Therapy Chronicles. Welcome back to the Music Therapy Chronicles podcast. In this week's episode, I talked to Marie Miller, who is a music therapist in Maine and New Hampshire. Marie has extensive experience with autism prior to her music therapy education and career, and her experiences in that setting, I think, have really shaped her ability to develop and implement interventions. Marie uses tons of visuals, lots of tactile cues, incorporates many domains into a single intervention. And in this episode, she walks us through how she develops those different props, how she uses them, why some of them are important, all that good stuff. So I hope you enjoy that. Before we get started, though, I want to remind everyone, or if you haven't heard already, the Music Therapy Chronicles now has a Patreon page. So if you feel compelled to support the podcast in that way, please check out patreon.com/musictherapychronicles. And if you're unfamiliar with Patreon, it's kind of like a way to subscribe or monetarily support a creator or something that you feel like you're getting value out of. So for those people who feel compelled to do that, I am going to start offering the opportunity to ask questions to the guests on the show. So when I schedule an interview, I will put on the Patreon page, this is the person I'm going to be talking to. Are there any specific questions you have? And that'll be a little exclusive for our Patreon sponsors. So thanks in advance for anyone who checks that out. And let's get into this week's episode. Welcome to the podcast, Marie.
Oh, thank you, Trisha.
How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Beautiful day here in Maine.
I bet, yeah. I bet this is a really nice time of year to be in Maine, too.
It is. It is. The past couple days have been a little on the warm side, but it's looking a lot nicer today.
Definitely. I'm glad to hear that. So, to start us off, will you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I am a board-certified music therapist working in mostly Maine at this point. Also have still a few clients in New Hampshire. I work primarily with children with speech, motor, and communication challenges, and work primarily with children on the autism spectrum. I say children, but I actually work with probably age 2 to 21 is my primary age group. So big kids too. And yeah, I had never heard of music therapy when I got into the field. I was working in a preschool in Oregon for children with special needs. Actually, all of the children had a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. And in this program, I just kept seeing music working really well, but I didn't understand it. And I didn't know music therapy was a thing. And I was probably largely inspired by all the children, but there was this one child in particular, and she had such a hard time coming to school. And I found that transitions were so hard for her, but I found that if I sang a little tune, sang about what we were doing, all of a sudden the child would take my hand and we'd go on to the next activity. And this child was still developing speech, but if I sang a song, she could fill in the word I left out. And I didn't know what this magic was, but I became really interested in it. And I was sitting in an in-service one day and I turned to my friend who was a special education teacher and I said, I know what I want to do with my life. I'm going to have a music program for children with autism. And she said, oh, well, that already exists. It's called music therapy. And had never heard of music therapy. So of course I went home and was just looking up everything I could about music therapy. And there happened to be a school that was only 35 minutes away. Sadly, the school is no more. But at the time, it was only 35 minutes away. And I went back to school and I graduated, finished my internship in about 2013, opened a private practice in Oregon, and then closed the private practice and moved to New Hampshire. And now I have moved to Maine. So I've jumped around a little bit. But I'm so passionate about this field and I'm just thrilled that I found it.
Yeah, me too. Because you put out a lot of good stuff and you're doing a lot of good work. So I'm also glad you found it. What compelled you, after working in this school with the kids with autism, to start a private practice instead of, say, trying to get employed with a certain school or something like that?
Yeah, so I think a lot of that probably I had an incredible supervisor and she was in private practice and my internship was at a school for children with autism. It was kindergarten through well, let's see, I think they've added on their high school now. At the time, I think it was up until fifth or sixth grade. And I loved that she had so much, I just loved how much control she had over everything that she did. And I feel that way about myself, in that I, I want to be able to create the program that I see in my heart. And I, I feel I've worked with, before becoming a music therapist, I worked with children and teens on the autism spectrum for years. I've only been a music therapist for 5 years, but I have 12 years experience. And I just felt like I had all these, I had all these ideas in my head about how I felt a really strong program for these kids could look like. And I knew I just needed to do it exactly how it was in my head. And so private practice it was. And it's been awesome. And I don't think I would have changed a thing. It was definitely a lot of work starting a practice, especially starting one in Oregon and then moving it, closing it down. It was hard to say goodbye to clients and moving to the East Coast. But I think a lot of my drive comes from when I was working with these children in the preschool program. I just saw how hard these kids had to work every single day, and most of them would go to therapies after school. and once I learned about music therapy and started going back to school for music therapy, I was so excited about the possibilities of creating a really evidence-based, effective program that was filled with such fun and joy, and using these um, methods to build those skills and make it this really rich and engaging environment. And I because I knew how I had worked as an employee in the schools, and there's a way you need to implement everything. And I saw a lot of value in a lot of the programs. Um, and I also saw things that I also saw things that would work for maybe a third of the children, but for everyone else, it wasn't an effective I saw, just meltdown after meltdown, but still we had to come in and do, this was the method, this was the program we were using. And so I saw a lot of, oh, if I had my own way of doing this, it would be this way. We could target this skill, but it would be fun. And, this child's 3 years old, and it needs to be fun and engaging. So I guess I went a little off course there, but that's why I went into private practice right off the bat.
I think that's a completely valid answer. So, and it does, being in private practice does give you a lot of flexibility. Tell us what you envision, what your program is like, and how you identify what each individual needs, and then your thought process for adapting to them.
Yeah, so you might need to repeat a couple of those questions.
Yeah, sorry, there's a lot in there.
When it's not writing, I have a hard time keeping it all. Or you can put it in a song for me now.
Okay,
Um,
tell us about your program.
so my program that I envision, so working with these kiddos, I see a lot of need for helping them learn how to regulate their bodies. And I see, reducing anxiety and teaching them these self-regulation skills. And I see that that's kind of the primary, I go into a session, where are these kids and where do they need to be in order to get their brains and bodies ready for learning. And so my perfect program is one that is, I love working in schools. I primarily work in schools. I do work with some in-home one-to-one kiddos, but I love schools. I love that they're, building these skills with their peers. I love that you can have multiple sessions in one place. I love working in schools and in a group. So my ideal, I love having collaborating with the treatment team. I'm at a school with some really wonderful specialists that join the group, and I'm able to work on my own goals that I'm targeting, but also, oh, what are your goals, and how can I target this in our music therapy groups? And so my perfect program is a program that is rich in sensory and motor and visual. Like I'm mildly obsessed with visuals. So we know music is a global experience in the brain, and it activates so many regions of our brain. And I just feel adding that visual component of to increase learning and understanding and make concepts concrete. I make visuals for pretty much, I'd say 98% of my songs have visuals. And so a program that is sensory, motor, and largely based on movements, actions, and visuals. So getting them in that place where their bodies are calm. We do a ton of sensory and regulating movements, getting them to that point where they're calm and ready for learning, and then giving them these multisensory activities. We're using visuals, we're using movements, and we're just, building skills in this such a fun and engaging way.
Yeah, so you do a lot of visuals, a lot of props, and you have put them out on YouTube and Facebook, and you've been putting that out in the internet a lot. So, what's your process for determining a visual, developing the visual or the prop, and all that kind of stuff? How do you choose to create it and integrate it in your sessions?
Yeah, so there's a little side story. When I first started, maybe it was even a year into um private practice, I really loved coming up with the interventions, and I loved creating songs based off of, I would find out, oh, what's this child interested in? And then we'd have an activity that was based off of that. And um I had this feeling one day. I kind of got really anxious that, what if I run out of material to create? What if I can't think of what to make for this next group? What if I run out of new things to bring to this group? And I do probably 95% of my own material and maybe 5% of, something I've learned from someone else, or that a song that's, been out there before. And I had this fear of, what if I just get to this point where I can't create new things? And I was doing a group with a colleague, and we were doing the song Coming Around the Mountain. And there's a great book. Oh, I should have grabbed it out so I could. Let me see if I can even see who it's. I can't read it from here. So there's a great book, and it's kind of all silly versions of Coming Around the Mountain, but it has movements with each page. So, there's a squish splat, and it tells you to, clap your hands. And I wanted to add a visual component to it, but I wasn't sure what. So I just typed the words out so that the kids, because each one is, the first one is, and she'll whistle like a train as she speeds across the plain. She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. Toot, toot. And, you're pulling the conductor whistle, and we're saying toot, toot. So I said, oh, what if I type the words out and I put the words? So then I'm thinking, as we're going through it, because I would love to use the book, but with a group, it's just too hard to use a book. You can't play the guitar, you can't model movements. It's just too hard. The kids can't all see. So it's like, what if I print out a single page, laminate it for each movement, and we sequence it along, because they're already getting that motor sequencing. Why not add these words and the pictures, so they're really getting that, that beginning literacy, that left to right. They're seeing the visual and they're doing the movement. It's just, oh my goodness, all of a sudden it's this really rich experience, whereas before it was just a song with a couple movements in it, and maybe someone with that's struggling with receptive language isn't quite even understanding what I'm singing about. Maybe they're doing the movements, but they might not be picking up on, oh, we're singing about a train, and we're pretending it's the train whistle, and this and that. So and then it was like the kids were just glued to it. I had all these visuals, and I felt like that was sort of the spark. And now I bought a laminator maybe 4 years ago, and I just love this thing. Probably the best tool that I have, like the best, most used tool that I have. And I create visuals for almost everything I do. So if I've created our most new one, our newest one is about a dinosaur. So and we're looking for him. So it's all the places we go to look for him. So it's got an action for each place we travel, and it's got movements throughout. But instead of just the actions and the movements in the song, the kids are also able to visualize, where's this dinosaur going. And oftentimes I'll also put large font with the words there too, just so they're getting all that extra, and it either will be a word we're saying in the song, but oftentimes it's, okay, here's a picture of a cat. It's going to say cat underneath it. And so just building building as rich of a learning environment as I can. And I found that the kids are just, they're glued to it. It's just, it makes everything a little bit more concrete and activates that visual component. So it also suddenly was so easy to create anything. Every week I'm like, oh, let's do a song about this. And then to the computer I go. So for a long time, I was just finding images online and just, telling myself, what's education? I'm not selling these, so I can be using these in education. But I just felt like this was such an incredible tool during music therapy, especially so you've got a single page, so you can still accompany and do the movements. Sometimes we're doing sign language with the pictures, so you can still you put it you've got it, you pick it up, you show it, you put it down, you've got your hands free, and then it stays there because words don't always stay there. The picture is going to stay there. So if they didn't catch what the topic was about, they can see it lining up right in front of them. And so I just feel so I started feeling like, oh my gosh, I want to put these out there, but I can't just take all these other people's images that I've used from the internet, and because those were used in an educational setting. Granted, 90% of them were from Creative Commons, which is a wonderful resource, but I felt like I couldn't just put them out in the world and say, hey, here these are. So I got a Shutterstock account and started purchasing the pictures for each song on Shutterstock, and also purchased the licensing so that I could say, oh, hey, here's this song that I use, or I created this song, and here's a stack of 6 visuals that go with it. This is the sign language I use with it, or this is the motor action. So I created these videos, and with the visuals that I've, going about it the right way through Shutterstock. And so have started creating these little that you were mentioning, yeah, these little packages, because and anything that doesn't have a visual or has a visual that I can sort of explain and say, hey, just create this picture of 10 little children, and this is what I do with it. Then I've been putting those on YouTube. So I just have felt it was a huge. It was huge. I probably started it maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and the amount of material that I felt, it propelled so much material, but also increased so much engagement in our groups, and really provided a visual structure for a lot of kids that rely heavily on what they're getting visually. So they know that the song is, they have the musical cues that, yes, this is where we are in the song, but the visuals, they know, oh, once we get to that picture, the song's done, or we're halfway done with the song, and things like that. So working with learners who, a lot of them do benefit from a large visual component, it really just has enhanced the work that I can bring to these kiddos.
Yeah, you put a lot of thought into developing that all together, and that's a lot of time too to take to come home from your session, get this idea, develop the idea. Even just the process of laminating, sometimes I get to that point and I'm just like, I don't want to stand at my laminator and then cut things out. And
It's so true, but at the same time, I feel so. I just I love this field. I love working with the kids that I work with, but I also found that it fulfills a huge creative outlet for me that I didn't know that I had or needed. I've always been a creative person, but never in this sense of, creating these. Originally, I had this idea to create them into actual books, but this just creating a song and then creating visuals that go with it that help tell the story or teach the concept. And then I have like get my little paper cutter out, and I love laminating, and I love just it. I would say I love the work, but I also really really love creating what I'm going to bring to these kids.
yeah, your passion is very evident. And I get that. I'd say I'm at your level when I have it, it's all done, and then I'm walking into the session and then I'm like, wow, I wasn't, it's creative outlet. Yeah, I probably don't enjoy creating it as much as you, but I always go into the session excited to bring something new.
Yeah. Yep.
For sure. So you also incorporate a significant amount of tactile props in your sessions from what I've seen. So, and you have some DIYs too. So I guess that's two parts of a question. We'll stick with what are some of your tactile props, and then we'll go into what are some of the ones you've made yourself.
Yeah, so a lot of the tactile items I use during the group are usually sensory tools that I offer the kids at the beginning. What sort of inspired me, I've made some weighted lap pads that I was really inspired. I was working for a school district that I would go in, and there were a lot of kids in one classroom. I saw a lot of, dysregulation, a lot of anxiety, and they didn't have really the budgeting to offer these students sensory tools, which in my past I had seen really effective, offering kids something to hold, offering these weighted lap pads that I made actually my DIY weighted lap pads. I was considering buying some, and then I saw how much they cost, and I knew I wanted to make a large amount so that anyone who wanted one during the group could have access to them. So I found these really cheap cornhole bags on Amazon. So not only and I got the polyfill so that you could actually put them through the washing machine. Some are filled with like corn or seeds or beans or something. So these were polyfill so they could be washed. And I was like, oh my goodness, there's a bag that's already been sewn with items in it. I am not much of a sewer. Luckily, my sister helped me quite a bit with the sewing machine. And I went over to her house and I had all these cornhole bags, and I had bought fabric, some of it textured, like bumpy, soft fabric, and other just like plain or, kind of fabric that I liked. And I made a few different types. So I made some really long ones that could go over a child's shoulder, and I made some that could go on the lap. And the first couple times I brought this in, well, I had one little guy who wanted to have all of them on him. And he really had a hard time sitting still through music therapy, or really through most of his day. He was 3 years old, and he just kind of settled. And from then on, I've just always kind of brought them with me, and just it's an incredible difference when you give these kids the tools to help them kind of regulate their body. And another one that I'll bring to groups is I want to say there's all sorts of, they're actually exercise discs, I think, but it's a sensory cushion. I always call it a wobble cushion or a bumpy cushion. On one side it's textured with bumps, and the other side is smooth. And I love the sensory cushion for a couple different reasons. One, because it really helps wiggly bodies. It helps build that core, but also it provides the opportunity of, instead of saying you need to sit down or sit down, you can say, oh, do you want to sit on the bumpy side or the smooth side? Or do you want to sit on the carpet or the wobble cushion? And all of a sudden, like magic, when we provide kids a choice, we're building their autonomy, and also we're avoiding a power struggle. And the kids have that sense of autonomy. I get to choose, you still got to sit, but you can choose, obviously we don't say that, but they can choose so I love the wobble cushion for those. And, the bags works the same way, really. Do you want to sit with a lap pad or no lap pad? And so, yeah, I've really loved those. And I've recently become even more into props to support what I'm teaching, because I now have two kiddos that I work with, one with a cortical visual impairment, which is an impairment where your brain is having a hard time deciphering what you're looking at. So kids can actually, get to a higher range where they can kind of learn to see, if that makes sense. And then one child who has a visual impairment, and so I've started using a lot more like, so I'm so huge on visuals, but how can I support these kids? So I've started putting Braille on mini visuals for she has some vision, so she's got her mini visual that she can hold up close, and then she can work on the braille as well. And then and I also been including props like, oh my goodness, so I've got a song about a gorilla, and okay, look, I've got this gorilla, and I also have this little like a banana that so props that can help paint or help give that tactile understanding of what we're talking about.
Yeah. I have one of those wobble cushions like you said, and I use it a lot for myself in my sessions where no one else needs it, but I'm sitting on the floor because I was finding that at the end of the day, if I had a lot of sessions where I sat on the floor, my hip flexors were just so tight, and just having that cushion to support me a little bit more was is very helpful. So, if anyone's like thinking about getting that, even if, it's good for the clients, but it's also good for you.
Yeah, it's awesome. I wish I could I don't use them as much. I use them more in one-to-one
Mhm.
sessions, and I did have a group where I would bring two and it wasn't a huge issue, but a lot of times if you bring something that looks as cool as a wobble cushion and
Yeah.
you don't have, you know, 10 of them, it just creates a little bit of an issue.
That was one of my thoughts. So is there, from your prior experience in the school working with lots of kids with autism, is there like a singular prop or visual or something that music therapists don't tend to think of that you do think of because of that prior experience? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes total sense. I really feel like I did gain, I feel like that was such a beneficial stepping stone for me into music therapy because I feel like I use so much from my training, and I think the item that has been most beneficial, I would say, is a visual schedule, and or a visual timer. It I started out because I had never seen other music. I hadn't seen the picture schedule used in music therapy, and I'm sure it was being used. And I know my wonderful supervisor, she would have a written list for some of the older classes, and I didn't use it away. And I had one kiddo who I worked with one to one, and for about a year, really strong engagement, really great, good participation. And then after about a year, I suddenly started seeing, behaviors and and I'm sitting here trying to figure out why, what's going on here. So one, I enter wobble cushion, but then I created for him a visual schedule. And at the beginning of our music therapy session, we would go over the visual schedule, and it was like magic. So then, of course, I was like, okay, well, now I need to make a visual schedule for everything I do. And it really, I see kids come into the session and scan the schedule for what are we doing today. And I see kids, that start to get a little antsy, and some kids will just look and see, okay, and I always have the timer set up right next to it, and I always have the visual schedule, and okay, oh, look, I've only got two more things left, or look, there's only 6 minutes left, like I can do it. And it really has alleviated so much anxiety and just helps kids prepare for what's coming. So those are probably, and just using more visuals in general probably has been something I've carried over from working in school.
Yeah, those are really helpful. So here's a question I have, and I wonder if some of our listeners have. How do you carry all of this stuff?
So it's surprisingly, the visuals get really heavy actually. So I now have, those accordion folders.
Mhm.
And so I have a file cabinet that has, I probably have somewhere between 70 and 100 songs with visuals.
My
So I
eyes just popped out of my head for the listeners.
I have a lot, and some are really simple. Some are, I just have a folder of shapes, and some are I just have this folder of, this is the counting song that we do in the winter, and this is, so not all of them are these like 6 to 8 page, but a lot of them are like a 6 to 8 page pack of visuals that go along with the song. And so I have this accordion folder that I, will fill at the beginning of the day and organize by, the groups. And it's actually quite heavy, but it doesn't take up a lot of space. And so I have a wagon, a collapsible wagon that I keep in my trunk. And so on days where I know, okay, for this group, I need 4 weighted lap pads. And the weighted lap pads are really, really heavy, but they're kind of amazingly, I feel like Mary Poppins. They fit in this small like canvas bag, and so my wagon sometimes ends up rather large, but on other days it's just all can fit in a couple bags with my guitar. But I do use a wagon.
Very cute. It's funny. I think sometimes we commonly get, oh, it's the guitar lady or, the guitar man. Well, yeah. I always feel like the bag lady
Yeah,
because I have my guitar and then I have a bag on one shoulder and like I
yeah,
might have a rolling bag and
yeah.
yeah.
I highly recommend a wagon. You definitely get some looks, but it really is a back and shoulder saver.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I noticed last winter there were a couple weeks where I was thinking, why is my lower back so tight? And one day I was walking to a session and realized I was walking sideways. And I was like, well, this is why. This is why my back is tight. So, what is kind of the reverse of 2 questions ago? What is something you, as a music therapist, tell or would tell staff at a school, teachers at a school, a tool they can use?
So well, are you asking during a session?
Anything, during, before, after, if they ask, any advice that you'd give a teacher.
Okay, yeah. So I'll answer that in 2 parts. So during a session, I really try to kind of model most of what I'd like for prompting, and that is minimal prompting. And every so often, I'll say, "Oh, well, let's see, if blah 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 will." Let's see if he'll try it on his own this time. I see a lot of hand over hand, and so it's and really wonderful, wonderful. I feel every place I go, there's such amazing staff. I feel really lucky. I absolutely love the staff everywhere I go, and the professionals, the teachers, the treatment team, everyone has been so engaging. So it's really minimal during the session, but so then little tips and tricks that I'll tell either families or if a teacher say, "Well, that's working so well." So I love using music for transitions. And I often am telling my families like, "Oh, have you tried, creating a little tune just to prep?" I love using a visual to cue what's coming next. Maybe a kiddo's not ready for a visual schedule. Maybe they just need that transitional object. Like, here, this is where we're going, or this is what's going to happen next. And having that clue of, okay, no, it's okay, we're going here, and having that piece that makes sense, that object or picture that shows what's going to happen. So that's another thing that I'm a huge proponent on, is providing the kids that predictability and that structure. And in using music, I love, encouraging teachers and parents to use music and to use those. I have people tell me fairly frequently, "Oh, we used your your calm down song, or we used we did your version of Bear Hunt, and it was great. The kids were loving it, like all the actions and the movements and the padding and the singing, or like we used that movement song to kind of get going and rein the class in. So I feel it's more of just demonstrating with a little tidbit here of like, oh, that, that I have found that works. That's really helpful. And so I have I do work with a couple adults, and I have helped create some in-home, rhythmic exercises to help with, speech or motor that staff has just taken and run with, which has been awesome. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I
I don't
think
know if
so.
I don't know. So
I'm also a lead by example person.
yes,
So
okay.
I totally get that. And it's really hard for me to get out of my comfort zone and say, very simple, let's give Johnny a chance to try.
Yeah,
Sometimes I feel really uncomfortable saying that, but it is so true and important that our
yeah,
clients have that advocate and get that
yeah.
opportunity somewhere.
Yep, and that is so just important for making those neural connections. They need to do it themselves. They're, that hand over hand. I try to as minimal prompting as possible so that the child can, you know, work on building that skill and not always have, and it raises anxiety when someone's holding your arm and
Yeah. Yeah.
so yes, but that is hard because, everyone is doing their best and doing what they um, have learned and understand to be, they want to help these kids succeed.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's like, oh, wait, hold back just a little.
Yeah. I've even had staff say to me something to the effect of, excuse me, like they almost feel it's a waste of my time for me to um, do whatever and then give the processing time. The staff feels like, they need to prompt because it's not happening, and yeah, it's really important to just say to them like, no, that's okay. It's a challenge, and we're giving space for the challenge, and that's what I want. I don't want everything to just be, well, they already know how to do A, B, and C, so we're only going to do A, B, and C.
Yeah, and even 5 seconds of processing time,
Mm-hmm.
that feels like a really long time to people. And I definitely am someone who feels that compulsion to to keep something moving or to fill a space
Yeah.
when everything has stopped. And that was a big thing for in my internship and becoming a music therapist was it's okay. Feel how long 5 to 10 seconds is.
Mm-hmm.
That is how long you should be letting these kids have for processing time. And it was really hard to do, especially with that instinct to not feel like you were leaving the child high and dry, worrying you were going to lose their engagement. But in so many instances, there would be that, 1, 2, 3, 4. That feels like such a long time. And then
Yes.
all of a sudden, there would be the sign language, or there would be the vocalization, or there would be, putting the shaker in the drum. So um, it was one of those things where, okay, I know it's true, but then as you start to see it, you're like, okay, I believe it. Now I need everyone that also may feel that need to help because we don't want to leave a kid high and dry and we want to see them be successful, but we have to know that giving them the processing time is how we're going to help them be successful.
Yeah. I also find that documenting, even if it's not the specific goal, but documenting the decrease in processing time is a great way to show progress. That,
Yes.
some other professionals I work with don't necessarily. I don't want to say they don't think of it, but they don't do that. And to show that it used to take them 30 seconds to do this thing, but now it's taking them 10. That's really
Yeah.
significant. And,
Yeah.
yeah, sitting there for 30 seconds 4 months ago was really hard.
Yeah. It's huge. I just was talking about this today. I was in one of my groups and I was afterwards I was chatting with the teacher and the occupational therapist, and I was saying, "Oh my gosh, can you believe blah blah blah's processing time?" Whereas previously, this child would be doing the sign language um, and it actually was incredible. Her memory for the patterns and the movements, but doing the sign language, but she'd always be a step or two behind because she needed that 4 or 5 seconds additional processing time. And today, doing one of the songs, she was right with me. And we even introduced a new song with sign language last week, and she was spot on with some of the signs today. And that just seeing that processing time decrease.
Yeah, that's really beautiful that you were able to facilitate that experience and that the rest of the staff was also able to see it. That's I find those moments really fulfilling too. I like being able to see it myself, but I feel like for a lot of people they have to see music therapy to get it, and those are the moments where I'm like, you can't miss that. It's right in front of you.
Yeah,
Yeah, totally. All right, are you ready to move into some rapid fire questions?
I am.
Alrighty. The questions are short, but your answers don't have to be. We'll start with coffee or tea.
Coffee, but I also really like tea. I definitely coffee, but I also like tea in the winter. I love hot beverages.
Hmm. I always try and have one in my car for between clients because it also helps with just like self care for your throat and singing it all day. And
Yeah, yeah. I'm a huge fan of rituals too. So I think, possibly largely the caffeine in the morning for coffee, but I love the ritual of getting up, coming downstairs, opening all the windows, 6 o'clock in the morning, all the birds are chirping, making that coffee, that ritual, and kind of the same thing in the like cooler months, like that ritual of like in the evening, making my tea and just, I'll maybe by the third cup, I've used the same bag and it's just hot water at that point, but it's just that ritual, I think, and just kind of I love just drinking things, I think.
yeah. Well, and living in the more northern climates in the winter, I think definitely adds to that
Yeah.
experience.
Yes, that could be it as well.
Yeah, I get that. Early bird or night owl?
Definitely early bird. I I can't really stay awake at night past like 10 o'clock. So definitely an early bird.
That's helpful for working in the schools.
It is. It is. And morning time is my favorite time. And it's my, everyone has like optimal brain time. And mine is 6 to 10 in the morning. And that is my time where I'm creating things and I'll make all my visuals and I'll run up and I don't know, 8 o'clock in the morning, get my laminator heated up and drinking my coffee with my laminator.
That sounds like a ritual too.
Yes. And that could have something to do with it too. I just love the whole process of kind of creating that kind of coming up with, okay, these are my goals. These are the things this child or this group are interested in, motivated. This is and how can I make that? So I think that you're right. I think it's like that whole ritual too, and then getting my little paper cutter out, my laminator, got my coffee.
Beautiful. Something that you would tell your younger self.
So I think in terms of music therapy, I think I guess that's not that much younger because I've only been a music therapist for 5 years. I think, and maybe let's see, maybe this will end up being something I could have told my younger non-professional self too. But I think something I really struggled with right off the bat was, and I think what it comes down to is the people who were watching. So the two things that I struggled with were setting boundaries with the kids that I worked with. And my internship supervisor was really big on setting boundaries, and it was really, really hard for me. I really had a hard time putting my foot down, setting the structure, saying, this is what we're doing now. And, you picked this and we're going to complete it. Or you need to be on your cushion before the song starts. Or no, we're not taking all the bars off the xylophone right now. those types of things. I had such a hard time putting my foot down with kiddos, and not I shouldn't say putting my foot down, but setting those boundaries and those expectations for this is what happens in here. Yeah, we're going to have fun. But I found that once I did start setting boundaries, so much growth happened. And I just saw this, kids, they want boundaries. They want to feel, and they push them because they want to feel like, and as soon as they understand this is what we do, this is the boundary, this is the structure of the session. I saw anxiety reduction. I saw behavior, like a reduction in behaviors throughout the session because they knew it was expected of them and they knew I was going to be firm on that. I think there's a lot of uneasiness that comes with inconsistency, that when you give them that consistent, I'm always going to have the same answer for this. No, this is never allowed. No, this isn't climbing the shelf is not a silly thing right now. Like just being really firm and setting those boundaries. And that was hard, especially working in home, because when you first start setting boundaries, you may have tears. You may have a child getting upset as they work on like understanding this is what is acceptable and and this is what's not. And so, pardon me.
Yeah, I definitely experienced that too as a new professional.
So that and then the second part would sort of, I think, also comes into play with being observed, I guess, by staff or by a parent, um, was setting the bar high enough, so that you really are, these kids are really growing and they're really achieving. And I think that setting the bar, knowing that what you're bringing, that it is backed by evidence, and that, yeah, maybe the first day, maybe the first week, maybe the first month, something may have minimal participation, but that that all the tools are there. There is a strong rhythm base. There is movement. The brain and body is activated. We're activating these centers. We know that, these kids, with the amount of time, they're going to start. So some of the things I've brought in before, I just get these looks like, what? These kids can't do this. But then in a month, I mean, they're doing it, or maybe not a month, maybe 2 weeks, they're doing it. And I've raised the bar. So not only are they building this skill because I knew that they could do it and gave them the tools to do it, but they're also, they're growing and they're feeling that sense of pride. Like, this was something that was hard and now I can do it. So that just builds self-esteem. And initially it was really hard for me to bring something in and not see immediate participation. Maybe one or two children would participate the whole time, but feeling like, okay, is this too hard? But I think that that's one thing that I would have told myself 5 years ago, set the bar. And luckily, I learned it fairly soon on, that if I just stuck with it, and I just kept, being consistent with how I was presenting it and what I was expecting, that within 3 sessions, there was, 80% participation. And, within a month, we had everyone. And now, so some of those things that were so hard, some of the kids that, some of the kids that it was most challenging for, maybe they just needed extra time to watch it or extra time to process it. Because those are the kids that they get so excited when they see it on the schedule. They are, participating in every movement. They're, vocalizing or using a talker device or, using sign language, and so, like, such strong participation. And I would have told myself I guess, I keep saying back, I've only been a music therapist for 5.5 years. But I would have started setting that bar right off the bat. So raising the bar and setting those boundaries. But I think that is something I really wanted to share in case there's someone out there that is just getting going and could benefit from setting those boundaries, setting healthy boundaries. It really, and it saves a mountain of energy when you set the boundaries, and you work so much less because you're not working on managing these behaviors that in a group it's not okay, and once kids learn that, it's just, everything is just falls into place.
Yeah. Those
Most
are
of the
really
time.
good ones. Yeah. Sometimes things are unpredictable, but those are really good tidbits. Your music therapy elevator speech.
So it's so funny because I always find it comes up in a very similar manner how people it's not that often that someone sees me with my guitar and says, "Oh, what do you do?" Because I work primarily in schools where they are aware that, I'm going to come to your classroom. I'm a music therapist, and this is what we're going to do. So I'm not usually, I know a lot of people in other settings, medical settings, and other settings where people see them out and about with their instruments. And, whoa, what do you do? So I feel the most common setting is I'll be talking about um, driving somewhere, or someone will say, "Oh, I was just driving up through this town," and I'll say, "Oh, I work there as well," or "No, what do you?" And they'll say, "Oh, what do you do there?" And I'll say, "Well, actually, I'm only there this day of the week. I work in a variety of settings. I work with children with speech, communication, and motor challenges." So I typically say that first, only because I feel like there is somewhat of a misunderstanding of music therapy. So I always kind of front load with the who I work with, and I'll say, "Oh, I work in a variety of settings. I work, in special education and in home. I'm a music therapist." And so then they'll say, "Oh, wow," and I'll say, "Yeah, yeah." So and they'll say, "Oh, that's really neat," or maybe they know what music therapy is, and maybe they don't. And that's my kind of opportunity to, if it's not just a conversation in passing, but I'll get to the opportunity to say, "Yeah, so I work with children. I work with a lot of children on the autism spectrum, and I get to use music to help build skills." So I'll say, I work side by side with the treatment team. I collaborate with speech therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, and a classroom teacher to help build skills, and with a rhythm-based program. So and I'll give them a little more information if they're looking for more information. Kind of go through some examples, but I usually do start with, "Oh yeah, I work with," I either say, "Oh, I work with children with special needs," or, "Oh, I work with children with speech motor communication challenges."
That's a good way to approach it with the population first. Client centered elevator pitch.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Client centered. I just, I think that saying who I work with provides the opportunity to avoid someone guessing at what you do,
Mm-hmm.
which I have found. I'm a music therapist. Oh, so what is that? Is that, and I would be curious if I heard of a field that I didn't wasn't familiar with. And if you're not familiar, music therapy could sound like, "Oh yeah, I just come in and I press a button on the CD player and let the music do the work."
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Don't they have iPods for that? Yes. Your favorite self care practice.
Well, I would say favorite self-care. I love being outside. And I would say, so a weekly, not a daily self-care, but a weekly is I love getting outside, especially on the water. My husband and I just bought a house in Maine, and we live really close to a boat launch. And we were so excited, except that we had no boats. But we were so excited. We were like, "Oh my goodness, we're 2 minutes from the boat launch. We don't have any boats, but someday we'll have a boat." And then the boat ferry, like, it was amazing. We somehow, by a stroke of luck and maybe being near a boat launch, we were gifted three different boats. So we have a tandem kayak, a canoe, and a small motorboat.
Wow.
The canoe actually came strapped on top of the motorboat. So it was a two for one that we were just gifted. So we've been, my husband and I have been just getting out on the water every week, which is amazing. So that's a huge self-care, is just getting outside. We love hiking with our dog. She's older now, so hikes are becoming a little slower, little more like nature walks than hikes. But yeah, so self-care. And then on a on a daily, or maybe not every day, but just that kind of mental, like, whew, I love, in the mornings, I get up really early and I like to just spend that first. So I feed my animals at 7. And so I spend that first, the first little bit when I get up doing my session plan. And then I just sit and I let myself have whatever time is left to have my coffee with the windows open and just kind of just enjoy. There's so many birds. So that's a huge kind of little time chunk for me. Sometimes it's only 15 minutes. And then feed the animals and start getting everything prepped for the day. And so also, I really love just kind of zoning out to a Netflix show or like a book on tape, something that's just totally like get your mind off it. So that's a self-care for me. Netflix and books on tape. Very relaxing to have someone read to you.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. I switch in the car between clients, between podcasts where I'm learning something and then a fiction book where I can have
Yeah.
it going in the background.
Oh, so relaxing. I have a hard time doing them when I'm driving because I feel I can't really um, I forget what's happening in the book. But I love like coming home and just sitting on the couch and starting my book on tape and just zoning out and just listening to the book. It's very relaxing.
Good one. Something that is currently adding value to your life.
Probably these boats.
Yeah.
Definitely, definitely having such access to the outdoors. We used to live on a really busy street, so for the past 3 years, we were in a tiny apartment. At the time, we had 2 large dogs, sadly down to one dog, one cat. But we lived in this tiny apartment on this really fast street, and I felt like my outdoor time, which was dog walks, I lost that. And so it was so stressful walking down, Route 101 and having cars whiz by you and hoping that you've scrunched your dogs in tight enough. And so I just feel like our new location, we're on 5.5 acres of wetland behind us, is adding immense value. Just having a peaceful place where I can walk my dog and, we just get outside a lot. So that's definitely probably the largest factor right now, adding value.
Beautiful. What is your current favorite intervention or song to use in a session?
That's so hard.
I was thinking it might be with your 70 to 100 folders of visuals.
Yeah, there's so many. But I was thinking, oh, well, I want to share one that someone can easily like look up and be like, oh, I want to use this. I've been listening to your podcast, so
Thanks for listening.
I've been prepped for a lot of these. I don't like being unprepared for things. You should see the notes I have in front of me. Probably half of them I have not even touched on.
We'll do another episode then.
But yeah, so when you were asking that question to the ends of your other podcast, and I was thinking, oh, well, this one's my current. Usually my favorite is, whatever is the new one that's getting this like good response. But I would say one that I learned from someone else. Oh my goodness, I'm going to try to think of her name. She writes kids music for children. Is it Mary Rice? I think it is Mary Rice. And she has a song, Matilda the Gorilla. And I have gotten so much use out of that song. I love it so much. And I, of course, have added sign language. So we do the sign language for gorilla. We do the sign language for banana and tree. And why I love this intervention is because there are opportunities in the song for everyone in the group. So someone who is just beginning to vocalize, the chorus just sings ooh, ah, ooh, ah. So and then I'm doing only you can see me right now, but I'm showing the visual cues for mouth shape. So we'll do ooh, ah, and so it has that section for kids that are pre-verbal, developing some speech. It has sign language. Well, it doesn't have sign language, but I added in sign language for motor imitation and adding that motor piece, and for kids that are developing that form of communication. And of course, I made visuals for each one, and it's such a sweet story. It's about a gorilla. I had to change some of the lyrics because she in the original song, they sent her to the circus. So I, of course, had to rewrite it, and she goes to the jungle, and didn't want to send her to the circus. That was too sad. So yeah, Matilda the gorilla. And at some point, so I've been starting to put some of the songs that I'm like, oh, I get so much. I just love this song. So I've been starting to put some of those on YouTube, and that's one I hope to put on, just sort of how I do it. I can't. I can't put the visuals on, but people can create their own visuals. But that's probably the one that I've gotten the most leverage out of. And then also I always keep it in my back pocket, and it's one of my supervisor. She was wonderful, Emily Ross. And it's one she kept in her back pocket all the time was Raffi's Something in My Shoe. And I love that part too, because I love that song because it's a motor sequencing and verbal sequencing. So you're sequencing the word and the action with each verse. And it's also a silly song. And there's a he keeps getting something in his shoe. And so the first thing is a little wee stone, clap, clap. The second thing is a bouncing ball, boing, boing. And so I always have that in my back pocket with like, oh gosh, there's 3 minutes to go. I don't use visuals for it. I need something that is going to be engaging. There's a song for there's a portion for vocalizing where he's making this does this little mouth trumpet thing, which I'll do, but then I will say or and do it just vocalizing it on an open vowel sound, because the mouth trumpet thing is a little hard for children, and I want it to be successful. So and it also has this walking portion, so we can get their feet moving walking down the street. And so that's another one that is someone else's song that I use all the time. Thank you, Raffi. Just a great short song to have it. And you know what? He has some great chord progressions. It's really interesting. So it's one of those ones that is like, oh, this just is so nice.
Awesome. Those are great. And I will find them and link them so everyone can also find them. But keep a lookout for Marie's video with Matilda
Yes.
the gorilla.
Yes. And please, if you do Matilda to the gorilla, send her to the jungle.
I like that
Not
too.
circus.
Yeah, that's an important side note that sometimes we do change the lyrics. When I use "How Far I'll Go" from Moana, the part where they say, "What is wrong with me?" I sing, "Will you sing with me?" Things like that. Just
Yeah,
changing little pieces that can have a significant impact.
that's great. That's great. Yeah. So for Matilda, the gorilla, we always sign gorilla, and they don't. She's not really where she's supposed to be. She's in a park. She's someone's pet, and then a young man comes along and he says, Matilda, I know where you belong. I'll put you in the jungle to sing your song. But in the original, they'll put her in the circus. I'm like, wait a second, that seems worse. So
Yeah, I could see that.
put her in the jungle.
Good adaptation. Awesome. So lastly, where can people find you and to find Matilda the gorilla?
Yeah, so I am somewhat new to YouTube, but I do have a few of the motor songs that I like up there, and I actually have 3 more recorded that I just need to edit and put up there. So I have those on my website. I've started, the songs with visuals that I've been creating, I'm slowly starting to purchase the visuals from Shutterstock and create these little packages. So those are all on my website, rhythmandstrings.com. And on my website, also, there's links to my Facebook page and Instagram, and the YouTube link is also there. I would love it if you came and said hi on any of those platforms. Relatively, I wouldn't say new, but relatively active on social media. And I really kind of dove into it probably, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 months ago of, I need to be more active on social media. And I've just loved the communities I've found there. I didn't realize how many different groups there are out there. I've joined groups for cortical visual impairment and groups for autism and groups for music therapy. And you just get to see all these discussion pages and see what's going on and people adding research. And so yeah, I've recently dove into social media, which has been pretty great.
Awesome. It's great that it's being used in such a positive way. And I'm going to plug, we have a Facebook group too. So if you want to discuss this episode or pick Marie's brain, then find her on any of those groups, but also on the Music Therapy Chronicles Facebook group.
Awesome. I'm in that group as well.
You are. Thank you. Thanks for being in the group. Thank you for making the time to talk to me today. I really appreciate it. You are a library of resources.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Have a wonderful day. Hope
Thank
that
you.
you get out on the water this weekend.
Oh, thanks so much. You too, Trisha.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
After talking with Marie, I feel like we need another conversation, at least for me to get just a little tidbit of all the ideas she has in her brain. I was not kidding when I said she is a library. I wish I could just go to her office and check out her files and her interventions. And I'm really looking forward to when more of her stuff is accessible online and being able to go there for some inspiration when I need it. She definitely has such a passion for what she does and is a great resource for thinking of ideas and ways to expand an intervention, make it deeper, make it more accessible for more individuals in the group. And I think that is an awesome attribute and very important skill to have as a music therapist. Thank you so much for listening again to this week's episode. And if you or someone you know or someone you'd like us to reach out to to be on the podcast, please send us an email at feedback@musictherapychronicles.com, and that'll go directly to me and I'll get back to you or reach out to the person you would like to hear on the podcast. Your support is always appreciated, and we'll see you in the next one.